Hello. This happened to me a few months ago. I just need to share it with somebody. It all started at my friend's party. He's an artist who rented out a loft in the industrial part of town. If you can picture what a place like Detroit looked like in the 1920s, this is what the area looks like. A bunch of turn-of-the-century factories crammed into 10 blocks. Most of them are abandoned. So I partied a little too hard that night and decided to crash on the couch at the loft. I woke up around about 4 a.m. The sun wasn't out yet, but I could still manage to make things out in the dim blue light. I went to the bathroom, carefully tiptoeing around the people that were passed out on the floor. As I was taking a piss, I looked out the bathroom window and I saw the panorama of a deserted urban decay. I remembered how much I liked places like this. It was so dark and devoid of life, strangely serene. I went back to the couch and tried to fall asleep. After 45 minutes of staring at the ceiling, I decided I didn't want to be there any longer, so I swallowed my pride and I decided to wake up my girlfriend and beg her for a ride, since walking around this vacant street at this time was not an option. Being an awesome girlfriend, she was totally cool with it. She told me that she would be there in half an hour and that she would give me a call when she was outside. My phone died 10 minutes later, so I decided I'd just sit by the window and watch for her car. I sat there for a while. Eventually, my eyes started getting heavy and I began to doze off. A crashing noise woke me up. It wasn't loud, but enough to snap me back to reality. I looked out the window and I scanned the area, but I didn't see anything. However, across the street from the loft, near a mountain of garbage bags and one of those enormous dumpsters, I see a computer and a monitor smashed against the floor that hadn't been there before. When my girlfriend arrived, I went downstairs and I greeted her. Just as I was about to get in the car, I remembered a friend of mine who'd blown out his power supply, so I decided to walk over to the dumpster and see what I could salvage. The monitor was worthless, but the tower seemed to have suffered almost no damage. So I put it in the trunk and we drive off. About a week passes and I'd completely forgotten about the tower, until my girlfriend called to let me know that it was still in the trunk and that she wanted it out. And that night I brought it home. Before I took it apart, I decided to hook it up to my monitor to see if it still worked. To my surprise, it did. It ran Windows XP and it looked like it had been wiped clean. I decided to do searches for words like tits and pussy in hopes of finding some secret stash of weird deviant porn from the previous owner had forgotten. Morbid curiosity, I guess. I don't know. But the search came up with nothing. There were no pictures. And then I searched for movies and one came up. It was a .avi inside of a folder titled Barbie, hidden in the Windows System 32 directory. So I played it. This is where it gets disturbing. The movie was about an hour long and was made up of what seemed like raw exported footage. The footage was of this woman sitting in a chair and talking against a white backdrop. I skipped through most of the movie and it was all the same continuous shot. So I decided to sit through the footage and find out what she was talking about. 15 seconds into it, the audio became extremely bad and her voice was drowned in harsh static and background noise. I couldn't make it out. I imported the footage into Final Cut and tried to mess with the levels to isolate her voice. It helped a little, but I still couldn't hear what she was saying, so I was intrigued now. I began to really pay attention to her face and her body language. It seemed like she was being asked questions, because she stopped at times to listen and then continued talking. About 15 minutes into the footage, her face began to redden and contort as if the questions were bothering her, but she continued to answer them anyway. Shortly after, she started to cry. She sobbed hysterically for the duration of the film. One of the few words that I could lip read was skin. She repeated this word many times throughout the footage, and at one point, she even pulled at the skin from her arm and mouthed the word. She seemed to be unhappy with it. Kept on building, and about 40 minutes in, she was crying so hard she could barely look at the camera. She stopped talking at this point. The rest of the footage was just her crying with her head down, and oddly enough, she didn't get up or move. The screen just faded to black. I was fucking dumbfounded. I played the whole thing through many times that night, trying to find inflections or nuances in her movement that would reveal anything else that was going on. I felt so dissatisfied. I wanted to know more. That's when I noticed there was about 10 more minutes left on the timeline after the screen went black. 2 minutes past the darkness, there was more footage. The footage was extremely shaky, almost unwatchable. It depicted a pair of legs walking along train tracks. My guess is that the camera was accidentally left on as it was being carried somewhere. The person in this video walked along the train tracks for about 6 minutes, then turned into the forest and walked over what looked like foliage flattened to a piece of plywood. The person continued on this makeshift plywood road until the clip ended. My heart started beating with excitement, because there were train tracks a few miles away that looked very similar to the ones that they have in the video. I had to check this out. I called up my friend Ezra. He's a 6'4", 250 pounds of mostly muscle. I convinced him to go on a little adventure with me. I'm no pushover myself, but I felt if I was going wandering in the woods looking for God knows what, some extra muscle couldn't hurt. The whole idea of investigating this video had me so excited I couldn't sleep. The next morning, on a sunny Saturday, I took my flashlight, camera, and a 7-inch car bar knife with a matte black finish and serrated edge and went to pick up Ezra. When I got to his house, he wasn't even awake. When I woke him up, he pretty much told me to fuck off. I'd already packed and I had mentally prepared myself to do this, so I decided to go through with it without him. I parked my car at the train station, took my stuff, and hopped onto the tracks. After walking for about 2 hours, I saw the broken piece of plywood and my knees almost buckled with excitement. I searched the nearby foliage and there it was, a little plywood trail leading off into the forest. I walked slowly along the trail, paying close attention to everything. I would stop occasionally, kneel down and listen for anything or anyone, but it was so quiet. This was one of the most nerve-wracking things I'd ever done. I didn't know what to expect at the end of this trail. The dense tree line gave way to a little island of grassy field, and then I saw it. A house being consumed by the forest. From the look of it, no one had lived there for 20, maybe 30 years. I got my camera and snapped a few pics. A few yards away from the house was a tool shed made of rusted sheet metal. I just sat there among the trees for a while, absorbing everything. I didn't want to go into an open field. I had a bad feeling that something would see me. It took me a while to muster up the courage to go up to the house. The door was partially open. I pushed it with the flashlight and was relieved that inside was actually very well lit. I put the flashlight away, got my camera, and took some more pics. There was no furniture. The floor was riddled with brick, wood, and other rubble. Some of the walls had huge holes in them. When I went further to explore, I saw some things that I didn't pay much mind to in the moment, but now that I think about them, in hindsight, they greatly disturbed me. The first thing that seemed a little odd was one of the doors in the first room that I presume led to the basement seemed a little too new to be in this house. It was also the only door that was locked. Also, when I made my way up to the second floor, I saw some chairs and a fold-up table that also seemed a little too new to be there. But what disturbed me the most was the bathroom. The dust in the mirror had been wiped away, and the bathtub, I saw a clear plastic tub. It still had water droplets on it from when I presume it was last washed clean. That's when I heard something moan really loud. I jumped the fuck out of the second window and I ran back towards the track. Halfway there, I realized the moaning was most likely a water pipe expanding or contracting. That moment of relief gave way to horror when I wondered why the water would be running in an abandoned house in the middle of the fucking woods. It's been a little more than 2 months since this happened, and I haven't gone back there. Nor do I plan to.